So hi everybody and welcome back to C++ Tutorials for Absolute Beginners. This is video 343 and we continue again with the move constructor, and here down we have already started here with the examples, and I have put this here in the compiler explorer. Perhaps you put this in your IDE so you can execute here the code. So as a C++ beginner, what you should know here, and the answer is you should just follow the C++ standard, which we are using here CPP reference com, but C++ standard is one level higher, more formal. You just follow that. And how we follow that? We just use that what they defined. We have learned how to create a function, it was defined there. We have learned how to create an object, it is defined there. And we have learned how to create this temporarily unnamed object, it is defined there. So we are just looking in the C++ standard and we are just using their rules. We are not doing anything other. So, and then let's repeat that what we did here. Did we follow the C++ rule here? Yes, I just created here an unnamed object without a name. And it is called temporarily because it goes in the value category R value. And when we create a temporary object, we have calling the constructor. Okay, we follow the C++ standard rule. And for example, I can't create here a temporary object with anything like that. You can see this is not working. So we have really follow the syntax of the C++ standard. Okay, this is the first step. We just follow it. Then you follow this normally till the end. That's the only job what you have. In this case, let's follow this little example a little bit more. We jump here. Okay, we have created this temporary object, unnamed. Now I follow the C++ standard and I pass it here. Okay. And what does this mean in C++ standard? C++ defines this when you pass a temporary object from here to here. This is pass by value, and pass by value can happen normally. Then we have here, you have normally check here the constructor if there is an object created. You can check, but the standard says only when you pass by value, it means just you are not passing by reference. We know pass by value means you make a copy. So we are creating here a copy, but before we create here a copy, we have to create this this local variable a, because this local variable a we won't use. So this is all time defined in C++ standard. So we are doing nothing wrong here. And then I say here I use this a because I have created now this local variable a here, and I use this here in the function body. Again, this is defined how to use the function body I mean how to use a in the function body. And again, we follow the C++ standard. It says I can use the syntax return, and then I'm allowed to return it directly. In this case, all conform to the C++ standard. Nothing wrong. So, and the confusion part here was the compiler. Why? The compiler must follow also the C++ standard. So the compiler must also follow the C++ standard, but the compiler must also follow us. What I mean with follow us, because here I tell the compiler I want here temporarily unnamed object, which I want create here. The compiler said, okay, I see that you want create this one. And I follow the C++ standard, so the compiler will follow also the C++ standard. Then I say to the compiler, I want go here to the function and I want pass it here to this parameter list where by value, because I'm not using a reference. So I want make a copy here. The compiler says, okay, I see you want make a copy. And then I say to the compiler, I want create here a local variable called a, and I want to use that. The compiler says here, okay, I see you want to create a local variable a, but here comes the point now. The compiler says not directly, I see what you are doing. The compiler says, I see that you are following the C++ standard and you are trying to achieve here something. And this something is how we are using the syntax. So the compiler sees what syntax we are following here. And then the compiler says, I follow also the standard, I follow also you. But internally in the compiler, I do this all kind what we are doing here with calling pass by value, creating a copy, and then creating here a local variable a, and so on. I do this perhaps differently because I'm not using text internally. The compiler is not internally dealing with text. The compiler is dealing with memory location registers, memory, then all this kind of stuff, different kind of memories, L1 memories, and then stack memory, and so on. And so the compiler says, okay, I follow all your rules, I follow C++ standard, I follow the syntax which you are giving me, but internally I handle this in my way. And this is the confusing part, because in turn the compiler said, I don't create here this local variable a. This one you create here in C++, and then you use, also the programmer, when I say you, I create this here in C++, and you use this one to return, and then you have here this whole part, and then you initialize here a1. This is what we do in C++. Internally, the compiler says, I still follow the C++ rule, the C++ standard rules, but all the things what you are doing, I can skip according to the C++ standard rules. So I don't have to create here an a local variable. I don't have to handle it in your way. So I can make this internally differently, and that's why we have a problem. So, and what is now this problem? The problem is this confusing part that the compiler and we as a programmer we both follow the C++ standard, but we as a programmer use here the C++ code and doing it in our way, the C++ way, with this creating local variable a. And the compiler is following us as well. So it is not breaking any rules. The compiler says, yes, I will do exactly what we have here, but in his way. And he is not creating, for example, this local variable a in this case, what we have logically created and then used in the function body. The compiler says, I can solve this in another way internally. But what is now the real confusing part, or why does it matter for us? I mean, as a beginner, okay, I follow here the C++ standard and that's it. The real confusing part comes when we try something like this here. We want output every step, and this becomes very important in the future when we want to handle bugs which are a little bit difficult. So what I mean with bugs which are difficult, a simple bug would be, for example, this one here. I just forget the semicolon. I think you know this. When I forget here the semicolon, bang, we get here an error, and the error is here outputted, and then we jump here in the line. It is probably at the line. It says here 50. Yes, here's the line 50, and we are missing the semicolon. Expected the semicolon. This is a very easy bug. We don't need a compiler. We just watch out here the output window, and the compiler is even giving us here a hint. That's an easy bug. But what is a difficult bug? There are cases, I can't show it now right off my head, but there are cases where something happens there is no error, so the output shows no error, but when you run the program, there is an error in semantic, and you can't see that. What happens then? In advanced topics, you will try first, of course, everything what's possible in the C++ way. You make breakpoints, you make your checks, and so on. But sometimes in advanced topics, that's not enough, because it can be a bug which is really hard to find. Then intermediate and C++ people go to here, the compiler, because the compiler here shows every step what we are doing. So here it shows this one. Like I said, we create this temporary object, we pass it in and create this A here in C++. But here in the compiler, you will then realize, wait a minute, the compiler is not creating this A. And what is the compiler doing there? Perhaps this could be a bug. And then you have to analyze. We are analyzing the C++ not through our C++ logical code. We are analyzing it through the compiler code, because the compiler is showing exactly what it will, the executable binary. So with other words, this one comes close to the real thing what will be created and executed. You can see this here, by the way. Here the compiler says, so the logical thing says here, I pass it by value. Here should be a copy and create a variable A. All this kind of stuff is not happening here, but this one is defined in the C++ standard, but you can see it is not happening here. But the logical way says yes, the conceptual logical way says yes, it is happening in C++. I use A here. But here in this case, the compiler is solving this absolute internally again super differently. And then you have to see if this is the reason of the bug. But again, this is intermediate. We have to deal with assembly code and not directly with C++. As a beginner, we find many bugs already here, don't worry, even if it's difficult, but there are some bugs which will not be possible even to find here. These are then the super difficult bugs, and then we need assembly, but again, more intermediate stuff. So the takeaway is just follow the C++ syntax and the C++ standard, what they say, and just ignore for now as a beginner the compiler, because the compiler is doing it a little bit internally different, and we don't care at the moment right now so much. So, and if you have any questions like old time, write in the comment section. See you in the next video. Bye and good luck.